Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Alex Day. I'm one of the co-chairs with Claire Warner, wherever you are, I can't see anything, of the Futures track here at Tales, which is a brand new collection of very short 20-minute courses about the future of our industry. For those of you who weren't in the session before, just a little context for what these are all about. Over the last 2 days, we've been talking about a lot of very interesting topics, really trying to look at both our industry from internal, like the things that we do, the things that we make, and also externally, the factors like culture that impact all the work that we do as operators, as bartenders, as servers, as brand folks. Today we're going to talk, next session rather, is going to be a topic that we've been talking about a lot here at Tales over the last many years, and a very important one, the future of sustainability. We've got Tiffany Nurrenbern here to talk to us from her perspective about, I believe, the evolution of spirits. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks. Hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Tiffany Nurrenbern. I'm a program director at an organization, Zero Footprint. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the conversation. But the first thing I want to do is just kind of help bring us into the room at the task at hand, which is imagining what the world looks like in 2035 when we're talking about sustainability in the world of food, beverage, and spirits. So if you were in the last session, you've already done this a little bit, but I just want to invite everybody to take a second and kind of ground in what the world is that they want to see. With recent events, I feel like it's a little bit harder for us to imagine a world that we would like to be living in with the sustainability ethics and values that we would like to see in as little as 10 years' time. But if you would just humor me and take a second, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and think about what does the world look like in 2035? That's 10 years from now. That's the year my goddaughter graduates from high school. What does this world look like to you? What does it smell like? Most importantly for all of us, what does it taste like? Right? How do we know that we have created this beautiful, sustainable, delicious future that we are all involved in? And feel free to open your eyes now. And I'm going to share a little bit about why the image on this screen is a little bit about what that future in 2035 looks like to me. On this screen, you'll see a shot of some of the folks at Olander Farms in the Front Range of Colorado. They've been farming corn, rye, wheat, barley for 5 generations. And they know if they want to continue to farm for the next 5 generations, that they had to start thinking about the practices that they were using on their farm a little bit differently. So they started to bring in a series of practices that we call regenerative farming. So you can call it regenerative farming, you can call it carbon farming, call it climate smart, call it whatever you want. The basic principles are that what we are doing is working to farm with nature instead of against nature, working to build healthy soil that is able to nurture our plants, nurture our planet, and nurture us. So we won't go into a whole lecture on what regenerative agriculture is, but it's simple. At the most basic level, it is simple practices like applying compost, planting cover crops, doing things that help that soil to have a lot of life, a lot of vibrancy, that bring us a lot of benefits besides just carbon sequestration. It also helps us to manage extreme weather events. So thinking about droughts, flooding, fires, all of the benefits of regenerative agriculture help us to be more resilient in the face of a changing climate. So this is a little bit of the world that we want to see. And my vision of 2035 is that it's not just the Olanders, who have been a grantee and a member of ours, who have created now an award-winning spirit, Root Shoot Spirits, which just took first place at the London Spirits Competition for single malt American whiskey. But it is all of the farmers that our organization has been giving grants to, all of the farmers in the United States, in the world, that want to bring these practices to their farm, that want to do this service for all of us, have the opportunity to do so that we all have access to this incredible, nutritious, beneficial food that also helps us to have a better planet. Right? So we see Ophelia there, who's got olive trees behind her, but is starting to grow agave. We've got the folks down at Olander. We've got a whole group of people who are really working hard as a part of their industry to provide the ingredients that make the spirits that we are drinking, making, consuming delicious and healthy for all of us. Okay, let's see here. So I want to tell you a little bit about how we get to the world that we're looking at. And I would say that generally when we're thinking about ingredients and sustainability and all of that, our minds go directly to sourcing. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about why we don't focus on sourcing, why we have taken a different tactic to get us to the next place in terms of how sustainability and regenerative agriculture can really scale and become a solution that supports us to take the food and beverage industry from creating about 20 to 30% of global emissions into an industry that is actually helping to sequester those emissions and to help us to not only deal with our industry, but for others that are being created by other industries. So how did we get here? Or how do we get there? Like many people trying to create a better food system, we spent years thinking that changing farming and eating and drinking would be the fastest path to change farming. We were stuck on conventional models that assumed that farmers could shoulder the cost of bringing these sustainable practices to their farms if we just create price incentives and price premiums for sustainably grown ingredients. But that is simply not the case for most farmers. Despite decades of effort and billions of dollars spent promoting sustainable local food, less than 1% of US acreage is farmed under organic management, right? After 50 years of the farm to table, we've only seen the needle move a very small amount. And this failure stems from, we believe, a fundamental flaw in our approach, that society has been focused on changing eating and drinking habits instead of actually changing farming itself. Sustainability, as usual, lacks the mechanisms that enable resources to flow from those who want better, more agricultural change, like you, me, consumers, businesses, and government, to those who can actually implement that change on the ground, our farmers. So Fast Company just named our organization Zero Foodprint one of the most innovative companies in the world, #1 in agriculture, for what they called trailblazing a model so simple that it becomes revolutionary. What do? We actually fund farmers themselves to do the work that we need to do. We provide them the resources directly. Got that up there. And we call this we believe that directing those funds to farms to change their practices rather than just hoping that consumer changes will eventually transform agriculture. We call this approach collective regeneration. So our model is that everybody across the food and beverage system is chipping in just a little bit to help us make the changes that we need to see in the system, right? Project Drawdown, which is a group of climate scientists from around the world, has really done a bunch of work. I'm not going to dive into this, but that shows that it only really takes about 1% of global GDP to actually fund all of the projects across the board that we need to take care of climate change as an issue. This is imminently solvable. It just takes the political will and the willingness of everybody to chip in. We do know that about 68% of people at this point in time are willing to put 1% of their income towards climate solutions, right? And so this is what our model is based on. Our members at the highest level commit 1% of their sales to support transformation of regenerative agriculture through grants to farmers. We also have a lot of people that contribute in lots of other ways, whether that's 1% of a product line, of a vintage of wine, $1 from a cocktail, $1 from a dish, participating in collective action campaigns like we'll talk about later. Everybody doing their part just a little bit to create the funding that we need, the momentum that we need to get us to the future that we're looking at in 2035. So I want to share just a few lessons of the story from how we got here to help inspire us to think about how we have sustainability in our operations in a slightly different way, right? When we got started, our organization was founded by a group of restaurateurs, people who had started a pop-up you may have heard of called Mission Chinese, who had founded a magazine called Lucky Peach. And after a while of starting to do this work, starting to get more press, more acclaim, and then realize like, oh my God, what if what we're doing is one of the worst things that we could be doing for the planet? So they set out to answer those sets of questions. And I think that is what provided us the data that we needed to get to the place where we are. And the first lesson that I'm going to talk about, which is kind of based on the theme of this conference, which is evolve when faced with new data. So when they started to try to understand what are the emissions of a restaurant, what does that look like, they were assuming that this was going to be about the gas that was used in the stove, the energy that they were using, this could work. And while those are pieces of it, what we learned in those initial research projects, and then we learned for another 80 to 100 assessments, is that 2/3 to 3/4 of the carbon footprint of a restaurant comes from how the food is grown, right? So the first thing that we learned is that it was coming from a different place than we ever expected. So our team did what all good restaurateurs would do when they learn about that sort of a thing and they learn about the power of regenerative agriculture. They started a restaurant to champion those ingredients. This was called The Perennial. This was a restaurant in San Francisco that Bon Appetit called the most sustainable restaurant in the United States. They were sourcing carbon ranch beef. They were bringing in kernza from Kansas, which is we won't get into the details of that, but a perennial wheat that grows without plowing. They were staffing it with people who one person literally had walked off the job when they had Kikkoman soy sauce served at a staff meal. Like, this was the level of detail that they were going into. But after a period of time, they had two challenges. One, customers were saying, hey, when they would learn about this, where do I get this? And there was hardly anywhere to point them to because there wasn't enough supply. And the second piece was they started talking to their farmers who they were sourcing from and asking, like, this is so great. How does what we're doing here at the restaurant help you to do the next thing or the next practice? And the answers that they were consistently getting back was that it was fantastic to do that sourcing. It was supporting the livelihood of the farmers. It was supporting them to continue the work that they were doing, but it wasn't helping them accumulate enough resources to do that next practice on the next 25-acre paddock. It wasn't helping the next farmer who was afraid of risking that transition be able to take those changes. And so, despite the fact that our founder had sunk life savings into this restaurant, at a certain point they had to stop and say, like, we have new data. What we thought we were doing by operating this business is not what we are actually accomplishing. We need to change our perspective. And that's when we really shifted into the program that we are doing now, which is working with the food and beverage industry to crowdfund for the funds that farmers need to do this work for all of us. The second lesson I would say that was really important in our development as we moved forward was seeking progress, not perfection. And a lot of my work in sustainability over the years, it's working with these farmers that are the picture postcard of what a farm is supposed to do, working with restaurants and bars that have gotten all the way to the pinnacle of what they think that they're supposed to be doing, but there's only a very few that can be at that part, and it takes a lot of work to get there. And so this really opened up to us when we were talking with the person who was the chief economist for the California Air Resources Board, talking about the science and are we there yet? Can we start funding farmers to do this work and give the credibility that we need to our members in terms of the carbon sequestration? And what she said to us was, don't worry about perfection. This is directionally correct, right? We are moving in the right direction, and that is what is most important. If we wait for perfection, we will not get the progress that we need and the time period that we need. Anybody in here who's trying to green their operations at a brand or trying to green the operations at a bar knows that it is a pain in the ass, and it takes a very long time to get to all of those different things, right? One of the things what we offer is a way to make a difference right from the very beginning as you are doing that sort of work, but also it allows you the grace to figure out what is most impactful. What can you focus on? How do we get there? We work with 3-star Michelin restaurants. We work with 5 locations of Subway in Boulder, Colorado. Tim Scheel at Subway grew up in a farming family. He knows the importance of this. There's nothing that Tim can do to change his sourcing, but he can give 10 cents off of every Subway sandwich to a local farmer to be able to do this work. And thus far, he's been able to fund multiple grants of people doing that work in their community. So I just really want to say, we often find ourselves in this place where we get frustrated because it's not an all or nothing proposition, right? Our industry does not have to be a Portlandia episode. It can really just be everybody doing their part to help chip in to fund these projects to do this work. And then the third thing that I want to say that was a really important lesson for us was that we need to demand a delicious future and provide that for our customers, right? Like so much of the time, sustainability is painted as a deprivation, right? Something we can't have, something we can't do. But in reality, when we start looking at what is the future of spirits, what are the future of cocktails, how do we want to get there? Looking at that future can often provide us the inspiration to get to something even more delicious, right? When we were first starting a conversation about this, we thought this was going to be a panel. We were working with Elizabeth Faulkner, who's created a Spirit Tomorrow that's based off of dates, right? This was an inspiration of sustainability that led to something super tasty. We worked with a chef in Copenhagen, Amos, early in our career, and he gave his chefs a challenge to create dishes with only the leftover waste that was coming out of the menus. And that became the fastest way for a young chef to get a dish on the menu because those limitations were inspiring such creativity that they were going for it and they were creating these beautiful, amazing things. And so that's really what we're based in, right? Like this change is possible. We can do it. We can do it for as little as 1% of our sales, and we can do it in a way that brings joy to people. And that's the inspiration for our next upcoming campaign, which is Dirty Drinks. So, what is a dirty drink? Dirty Drinks is a bar and bev campaign that's raising glasses and raising funds for farmers to do the kind of work that we've been talking about. Every dollar raised from this campaign goes directly to a farmer to put into their soil. And whether that's putting olive juice in a martini, an espresso shot in a chai, coming up with a really fun, dirt rim. We have people all over the country that are taking creative inspiration on what a dirty drink is to them. And the most important part is that $1 from each of these drinks goes directly to turn dirt into healthy soil. So we're really super excited with some of our early adopters. We've got folks from the Bay Area like Viridian, Trick Dog, Little Saint, folks from Sacramento, the Butterscotch Den, Portland with the Scotch Lodge, and a lot of great folks in San Diego, which is one of the newest areas that we've been doing work. And so we're super excited to have all of these participants, and we'd love to invite you folks to join us as well. Because when we're talking about how do we leave this room and take this into action, the two takeaways that I'm gonna to leave everybody with are this. One, invest in the future, right? Whether it is participating in a campaign like the one that we have here, whether it's supporting brands like Makers that are actively working to transform 87% of their supply chain to regeneration, putting our money where our mouth is really a great way to do this work together. If you're in a bar, join the campaign. If you support the brands that are doing this sort of work, sometimes giving money or buying things can feel like a cop-out, but it's honestly one of the best drivers that we need to move this sort of change in our system. And then the last thing that I will say before I end this is also advocate for the infrastructure that you need to make a difference, right? We have had incredible federal programs that have been funding healthy soil transition that unfortunately we have lost in the last couple of months. And I just want to say that there is what we all do, like there was, when we did the assessments of the restaurant, like almost any restaurant in like a San Francisco or Portland was going to have a lower carbon footprint than anywhere else because of access to renewable energy, access to composting. And so like as business leaders, these are services that are helpful, that are impactful to your bottom line, also impactful to the environment, and your voice carries a lot of weight. So whether we are looking to make America healthy again or sequester carbon, healthy soil has benefits for all of us, and becoming champions of that work only helps us to move forward the work that we're doing together. So thank you guys for your time today. I think I maybe have gone a little bit over, but we are really excited to work with you all. You know, we're always saying bottoms up, carbon down is one of our mottos. So with every beverage, you can have a climate action. So thank you all. Looking forward to talking with you later.
Wow. That was, don't go anywhere quite yet.
Questions. Okay.
First of all, I cannot believe you did that in 21 minutes.
Oh,
That was
wow.
incredible.
Okay,
So respect. Amazing. Thank you so much. It's so easy for all of us to forget that these drinks come from the soil, right? Amazing. I think we have time for maybe one question, if anyone has one. Yeah, coming to you.
I'm trying to pick one of the. If I'm only asking one. So you talked some about the political landscape.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna sneak two. She can choose one. All right. So I'm curious how you talked about that 1% number a
Yeah.
fair bit. How does that compare to other so-called developed nations? So just to get a sense of where possibility currently is.
Yeah.
And then if you prefer the second, I'm curious. With election season coming up, let's say you were hosting a candidate forum at federal or local level. What would be the question or questions that you would try to put their feet to the fire on?
Oh, yeah. These are interesting questions. Yeah, I would say that right now, investment in soil health really varies depending on where you are at. And I wish I had all of the numbers in my head, but I think that in the state of California, we have quite I think depending on the tax year, sometimes we can get up to like $20 million that is going into soil health programs. England just committed to something like 2.7 billion. So I think that this is right. Like this is huge, huge numbers that are moving forward. We had a historic investment through the Inflation Reduction Act going to farmers like across the board, like major commodity crop folks, all the way to like small farmers to be doing that, and that's all very much in flux. Those grants were paused, and it's really unclear where that is. Each one is being kind of individually evaluated. So it is unclear to us what the level of investment is here. But I will throw out one number that helps us to think about what is possible. So if we're just looking at let's say the Kentucky bourbon industry, that's about a $9 billion a year industry. 1% of that, $90 million. Over the course of 5 years, that could help to bring regenerative practices to almost every acre, all of the agricultural land in the state of Kentucky, right? So these are very doable numbers if we have the will to be able to put this into effect. The state of Washington has just kind of started putting language to make this an opt-in, that bars and restaurants can do this and be facilitated by the state. We're going to try it again next legislative round. And then I guess, if I had to ask, the question of the politicians to hold their feet to the fire is kind of just what are they willing to actually invest in the infrastructure, right? There's a lot of talk at this point about how we're supporting farmers, how we're doing this, but put your money where the mouth is, right? We have actions that are proven to be healthy across communities. One of the things I didn't talk about is it makes for more stable farmers, it makes for happier farmers, right? Who are the ground, the bedrock of our rural communities. And so if you really say that you're ready to support rural communities, if you really say that you're ready to support farmers, this is what they're craving. At the federal level, these programs are across the board oversubscribed. So I think that that's really not just rhetoric, let's see where the money flows. Yeah.
And that's the most important question, right?
Yeah.
You have them on stage, make them say something.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent.
Thank you,
Great.
Tiffany.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Great talk. We're going to take about a 5-minute break before the next session. Hopefully some of you will stick around. We've got some new people that'll cycle in. The next session will be about the future of technology. I didn't think I was going to talk about this, but we had somebody drop out, so it's going to be me talking about it. So come on back. Thanks, everyone.